Hello and welcome to this video, and in this video I'm going to be giving you my 10 favourite albums by Santana and ranking them from my less favourite to ultimate favourite, as I have done so many times before. I really had a good go through the full Santana discography. There's many albums from the 80s, 90s and 2000s that I really like, and they've got fantastic tracks on them. But before we start, I must let you know that in the end, when it came to ranking them, all my albums came from the 70s. You know, I think in the 70s, Santana was really influential and influenced by jazz fusion. I think in the early 70s, he was running one of the great jazz fusion bands. And not only one of the great jazz fusion bands, but one of the biggest selling jazz fusion bands. And I think this doesn't often get recognised when people reel off, you know, who are the classic jazz fusion bands. They say Weather Report, Navish, Yorkshire, Return to Forever, you know, Herbie Hancock. You know, they'll run through those. They seldom say the Santana band, but the Santana band in the early 70s was making incredible fusion. And I think that influence really makes a lot of my choices from the 1970s. So all of these come from the 1970s. In 10th place, there's a number of albums for me vying for 10th place. I love Inner Secrets, Marathon. They're all fantastic albums. But the one I've gone through at number 10 is this one, which is called Festival. The reason why this doesn't get a definite place is that the first few tracks of it, Carnival, Let the Children Play, Gigando, those three tracks are also on the album Moonflower, and I really prefer the Moonflower, the live versions, more than this. But this is a fantastically recorded album. They're great versions. The thing that tips this for me above Marathon and the other 70s albums, Inner Secrets and, you know, Shango and all those later 70s, early 80s albums, is who's the drummer? There's a drummer on here called Gaylord Birch, and his groove and backbeat is phenomenal. And I would say that my favourite backbeat, my favourite straight funk backbeat is Gaylord Birch on the track Give Me Love. It's just, and there's other tracks, have a listen to him. I think it's the only album that Gaylord Birch appeared on, you know, with Santana, but it's such a fat groove. I love a fat groove, and God, it's funky. Some really funky drumming on here. You know, brilliantly recorded, great playing from Santana. This is from the mid-period where they've gone through the fusion thing, and they've got a little bit of a disco influence, and I really like that. I like it actually when Santana got a little bit more commercial, because some of those early 70s fusion albums are pretty heavy. They're some of the heaviest fusion albums out there, as we will see as we get in. So at number 10, Festival, a fantastic cover. You know, they so often have brilliant covers. At number 9, I've got the first album, Santana. So for me, the first three albums are a certain type of Santana. That's classic Santana. That's that sort of 60s hippie, sort of psychedelic rock band fused with that sort of Latin, you know, rhythm section, and then with a sort of blues guitar from Carlos. They do it so well on here. It introduces the sound. It's one of the best debut albums of all time. If you've seen Santana on Woodstock, and for me, Santana steal the show, even above Hendrix. Santana steal the show on that, you know, then that's what you're getting when you buy this. You know, the sound's not fully developed, you know, the compositions are a little simpler than what you get later on with Santana. But this is an absolutely fantastic album. At number 9, the first Santana album. At number 8, I've got Santana III. Now, for me, I loved Abraxas. I absolutely loved Abraxas when I was a kid. And when I got this album, I felt it was a little bit of just a retread of Abraxas. As time has gone on, I've listened to it more. I've realised there's so much more to it than that. And I think if we have a look at the Santana band there, this is the whole point in YouTube is we actually have a look at these lovely vinyl albums. We can see here, where is he? Right sat at the front is Neil Schon. Neil Schon's one of my favourite guitarists. Of course, the guitarist with Journey. Incredible rock player, incredible jazz fusion player. And I think his influence on this album brings in this. You start to hear the jazz coming in, start to hear the fusion coming in. There's some fantastic guitar solos by Neil Schon on here. I think they've advanced the early Santana sound, you know, the classic Santana sound, a little bit more. It's a really fantastic album. It's taken me, you know, it's been more recent that I have realised what a great album this is, you know. So at the moment it's at number 7. It could well go up. It's an album I've discovered more recently after ignoring it for so many years. At number 6, the fantastic Bauble. Like, all these albums I absolutely love. There's no bad albums here. There's sort of 3 jazz fusion albums that we're going to be covering. There's Caravanserai, Welcome, and this one, and then the live Lotus. For a band that is sort of a mainstream sort of stadium band, you know, what you would say was a commercial band, some of the music on here is really heavy. Santana is sort of exploring a sort of post Bitches Brew sound with a lot more heavier Latin feel. This one, which is the last of that sort of era, it's getting a little bit more commercial in a great way. You know, there's a few more vocal hooks on here, and I love all that. You've got guest appearances from Flora Purim on here. You've got Stanley Clarke on here. Absolutely fantastic album. It doesn't rate quite as high as the other ones because it's just a little bit lighter. And I want to go for the heavy stuff, as we will get into as we go on. So I think that's at number 6, isn't it? At number 5, and I've ranked this pretty low, because this for me was one of the great albums when I was a kid. This is the album that really got me in Santana and blew me away. And you know, this was the album, you know, which is Abraxas. I haven't got my vinyl copy. I think in the mid 80s at some point I left it out in the sun and it warped, so I then had to go and pick it up on CD. But this that's the classic Santana sound. Sorry. So if somebody said what's Santana like, I doubt I'd play him Caravanserai. You know, I would probably play him this. It's got classics on. Black Magic Woman's on here. Oye Como Va. Internet and Neshkabar's absolutely amazing. Summer Party's amazing, which is where we start to hear that sort of Carlos Santana signature guitar solo track, instrumental track. He is one of the great guitarists, full stop. One of my favourite guitarists. If you've watched my guitar video, you've seen that. But he's like Jeff Beck. He can play a tune, and the reason is because he's got such a beautiful signature sound. For the rockers out there, there's a track called I Hope You're Feeling Better, and they get a little bit heavy. I love it when Santana get a bit heavy, and they do on that track. So yeah, Santana Abraxas, fantastic album. And if you want to hear the classic Santana sound, right. So at number 5, we have the live album Lotus. Now this is an absolute beast. It's a triple live album made by the jazz fusion group. Lot of heavy Bitches Brew, Miles Davis influenced improvisation, but in front of a big audience with a great recording behind it. The production is absolutely fantastic. This album, as you can see, I've played it to death. It's falling apart, but it's sort of, I think it really is falling apart. But it opens out. It's such a beast of an album. If I can try and it might have even fall apart in front of your very eyes. Let's see. It's a. Look at all this. I think this is the sort of booklet that comes inside it with all this absolutely fantastic artwork, which this opens out into. This is a real beast. Of course, you get on CD, but this is what the vinyl album was like. Incredible artwork. You know, it's just a mind-blowing, psychedelic, out-of-body experience. Lotus is. In England, we have a comedy program called The Mighty Boosh, and there's there's an episode on there which is sort of a homage to this era Santana, and it's well worth checking out because this is a whole world. And if you know Santana from like the great big selling album with all the guests on, or you know Santana from Black Magic Woman, people don't know about this. This is heavy stuff. Lotus. If you want your mind blown, check that out. In terms of live albums, at number 4, I have this one, Moonflower. I love Lotus. This is a little bit more commercial. It's a little bit more hemmed in. It's still a double album. It's part live and it's part studio, and they mix that together really great. And it's, for me, actually has the edge on Lotus. There's still a ton of soloing on there, so they really let loose of the live stuff. This band is on fire. You've got Graham Lee on drums, and he's just phenomenal. This band's on fire as well, and I just absolutely love this incredible drum solo that runs through Soul Sacrifice and then to Head, Hands and Feet for your drummer. Absolutely incredible. Flor de Luna is another one of his great guitar solos. He really pulls together a lot of the tracks that are on the sort of more disco-y albums, and because they're live, they've got a little bit more meat. So yeah, this is at my number 4. So I have to keep checking which number out. Number 4, Moonflower. You know, Lotus and Moonflower, both fantastic live albums. It's really hard to come up with reasons why I've differentiated these albums between 3 and 4. You know, but the opening tracks on here. Dawn, Go Within, Carnival, Let the Children Play, Gigando, I'll Be Waiting, and then Zulu. That run is absolutely sublime, and it's sort of, it opens up very ethereal, and then the tracks sort of come in and it's really nice Latin jazz, you know, some nice vocals, and it slowly builds up and the fusion starts to kick in, and it ends up almost like sort of Mavish new territory. It's absolutely fantastic album. Right, at number 3 I have Welcome. Now, this album for me is where they've really got the jazz fusion right. This and Caravanserai, which is going to be number 2. This is where they've really got the fusion right. Really interesting mix of actually quite avant-garde free jazz, funk, heavy fusion, African music. It's all on here. Again, I love the sequencing. It's quite proggy in that it opens up with Going Home, which is a John Coltrane track, and that's quite avant-garde and it's quite free and a lot of noises, and then it's suddenly the funk hits in, the Latin jazz hits in, you get Love, Devotion, Surrender. There's some incredible guests on here. I know Flora Purim's on here. She sings, sorry, it's quite hard to read the writing. I think she sings, is it Yours is the Light? Yeah, she sings Yours is the Light, that's correct. Along with Leon Thomas, who was a singer with Pharoah Saunders, and he sort of yodels, this mad jazz yodeling. Some heavy stuff on here, but some also quite commercial stuff. Right at the end, we have a track called Flame Sky. Those of you who've come to this channel and know John McGoughlin know what a big Mavish John McGoughlin fan I am. Flame Sky is like a little extra Mavish new track. It's so heavy, and John McGoughlin and Carlos Santana really battle their way. If I was to compare it to stuff off Love, Devotion, Surrender, I'd say Flame Sky is better than everything except maybe The Life Divine. It's one of John McGoughlin's fantastic Mavish new moments. So yeah, this is at my number 3. Absolutely fantastic album. Brilliant stuff. At number 2, it's pipped by the even heavier, darker, more psychedelic, you know, out there jazz fusion of Caravanserai. How could a mainstream stadium rock band on a major label like CBS that are touring the world make an album like this? This is just utterly mind-blowing, you know. And again, it's got this sequence where they sort of open up with this trippy, ethereal, sort of ambient swirling stuff, and then, you know, slowly little grooves come in, the whole band sort of builds up. You know, you don't get to hear vocals for about 15 minutes. Very influenced by Bitches Brew, Marv's Davis. Absolutely fantastic album. It's really hard to describe what this is like. If you're expecting what to expect from Santana, you know, sort of some nice catchy vocals, cool guitar solos, you know, bit of Latin jazz, bit of rock. It's just not that. This is one of the great fusion albums. Really is. Absolutely brilliant. So at number 1, I have, beating all those, and it really is one of my favourite albums ever made, Amigos. Right? Now Amigos actually comes from the later period where there's a real strong disco influence on here. And you'd think, me being a heavy fusion guy, that I'd be putting Caravanserai or Welcome or Lotus at number one. But this album's got something about it, and I want to really go through what it is why I love this so much. Incredible lineup with Tom Coster on electric piano. He's on a lot of these fusion albums in the 70s. Tom Coster later appeared with Vital Information with Steve Smith, and he's a proper jazz pianist, one of my favourite Fender Rhodes players ever. We've got Ndugu Leon Chancellor, who played with George Dew, played with Weather Report. He's one of my favourite drummers, and his drumming on here is incredible. And the way he locks in with the percussion, Armando Perazza, of course, you know, he's absolutely wonderful. There's Greg Walker, great big powerful soul voice on this, absolutely amazing. It opens up with a disco track. But it's for me one of the greatest disco tracks of all time, called Dance Sister Dance. Really groovy, makes you want to get up and dance, starts up with really nice vocal hook, and it kicks on, and you're enjoying it and you're loving it, and you go, yeah, you know, it's not Caravanserai. But then suddenly halfway through, this drum beat kicks in, this riff kicks in, and it goes off on this spacey mood keyboard solo that just builds up and up and up. It's somewhere between Chic and Gong. It just suddenly goes so far out, you know. The second track, Take Me With You, is a really strange track. It's got the first half is like almost like heavy metal, heavy rock. Some amazing riffing from Carlos, some real rocking playing. And then suddenly they just click and they're into this really quiet ballad. I've never heard a band do this before. It's unique, that track is. The next track is called Let Me. Out and out disco funk track, kicks in, really funky, amazing bass line. And then again at the end, Carlos just turns in, for me, one of the greatest guitar solos ever made. If you check out my favourite guitar solos, it's in there. Screaming, you know, Hendrix, wah-wah pedal, amazing guitar solo. And these tracks seem to come in, they're so hooky and they're so catchy, but then Carlos will just take them and he just takes them up to another level, you know, they're just flying. When you turn it over, you get Gitano, and Gitano is like a sort of Spanish guitar, very Latin sounding track, beautiful Spanish vocal on there. I love it. It's just such a different track. I think one of the things about this album is all the tracks are so different. I'm sure this is the case of all of these albums here, but for this one, you know, you just don't expect that to happen. And then it kicks in with a real song. Tell Me Are You Tired? Another sort of disco track. Absolutely brilliant, real hooky, really funky. They do this a lot on this album. I think I love it. So you're bopping along to that and you absolutely love it. It's really brilliant. And then the electric piano kicks in. And he's motoring. But as the electric piano develops, the whole thing goes from sort of disco to really heavy jazz fusion. And the drums are all over the place, and Tom Coster's playing outside and it's going all over the place. Absolutely incredible. The next track, Europa, is one of those guitar solo tracks that I've mentioned before, like, you know, like Samba Party and Le Fleur de Luna, those where Carlos sort of plays a melody. It's not so much a big solo, he plays a beautiful melody, and his sound, you know, just allows you to just follow that through like you're listening to one of the great singers. I think of all the solos he's done, Europa is the best of them all. It's one of the great guitar moments. This album contains for me two of the greatest guitar moments of all time. And then the last track is Let It Shine, which is sort of a gospel, sort of disco-y gospel track. Really hooky, really poppy, really funky. So yeah, that's my number one for Santana. Like I'm saying, if you're a fusion fan and you want to check out Santana and you didn't want to get lumbered with something that you didn't really want, I hope I've gone through the albums that the most sort of fusion influenced, and I hope I've just made the point that, you know when we're talking about jazz fusion, let's not forget the Santana band of the 70s, because they were one of the great ensembles. So again, thank you for listening. Please put your comments in. That's my favourite bit about this, is reading all the comments and getting some opinions. And I think, building up a nice little community there of people who are into the fusion and the prog and, want to discuss this stuff. And of course, like the video and subscribe. So again, thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.